Hello, Sarah Sabin here, and welcome to another round of Sarah Sabin's Question Time. So, this video actually follows on from a video I did around executive presence and storytelling. By all means, feel free to go and check out that video. The question that I will be answering today is, Sarah, I get that storytelling is part of executive presence and great in public speaking, but how do I actually select the stories that I use? Because I kind of feel like the ones that I use are a bit lame. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is do not overthink it. So, essentially, you cannot produce creativity out of overthinking and overanalyzing this. The stories will come to you far more easily if you set the framework for it, which I'll go into, and then allow them to flow in, allow the ideas to flow in. So, sort of like a brainstorming session. So, just to recap, why storytelling is so effective. Number one, it engages the emotions of your listeners, especially when the topic matter is quite dull. And I'm going to give you a particularly non-exciting example. So it engages the emotions of your audience. Number two, it fires up the mirror neurons in their brain, which means that they are actually experiencing this story along with you. Again, that translates to more engagement and people listening to you more. So it is a great question. Well, how do you select those stories? Because people can have the tendency to think that they need to select these crazy out there stories that are super inspirational. And of course, that's going to lead to a bit of panic because you're like, well, so and so told a story about how they were homeless and then became CTO of a Silicon Valley startup. True story. Um, and I just can't hope to compete with that because that's never happened to me and I don't have anything that inspirational to say. So here's how to think about it. And I'm going to give you an example. Michelle Obama did a podcast recently where clearly the intention of this podcast was to be relatable and for people to see her as human. Within that podcast, she was talking about how she never even boiled an egg while she lived in the White House because at the end of the day, people were doing things for her and it was just easier to let them. Okay, maybe that part's not relatable, but everyone can relate to boiling an egg to make breakfast for kids. She also told the story of driving along, listening to loud music and singing in the car with her teenage daughter. Again, another relatable story. Neither of those stories are going to set the world alight in any way at all. But clearly, that wasn't her intention. So here's point number one. What is the intention of you telling that story? Is it to connect with people? Is it to be relatable? Is it to be inspiring? Is it to give people a kick up the butt? Right? Be very clear on that before you go in there. If you're aiming to be relatable, obviously you don't need to tell this crazy story. You simply need to tell stories that other people can see themselves in, like boiling an egg, for example. So that's part one. Once you're clear on the intention, then you work backwards from that. You want to understand, here's the key intention. Here are the key 2 to 3 points that I want the audience to take away. And then you go into thinking about, okay, what kind of stories could be suitable? Now, this is actually where people can get stuck because they're just like, I'm not creative. I don't use my creative brain. I don't know. I don't know what stories. So Key here is, let's say you're doing a talk or a meeting or even a public speech about cash flow. Really boring topic. You start by, well, unless you're an accountant, apologies if you find cash flow very exciting. It is, as a practical concept, exciting, but there you go. Side note done. If you literally pick apart the words and you take the word flow, then it starts to open up a world of creative possibilities. Now, when you are trying to brainstorm stories, go out of your usual environment and be still. Quiet your brain down. So you might want to take a walk, you might want to be listening to music. You don't want to be overthinking it. You take the word, in this case, flow, and you just gently bring to mind images that convey that. Could be water, so water flows. It could be the flow of blood and oxygen through the body. It could be the flow of time. Any concept that particularly appeals to you, you can use that as an analogy. So an analogy is a way of storytelling as well. For example, if you were talking about the body, you could talk about how cash flow is essentially like the flow of blood through the body. And if that is pinched off at any point, then the body doesn't operate. You can talk about how if there is a dam, it stops the flow of water, right? So you can start to think of ways to describe what you're talking about other than by using the usual terms. In terms of a story, if you come from a financial background, you are going to have a story about cash flow. And bringing that story to mind, giving it a beginning, a middle, and end. Here was the situation, person never paid attention to cash flow. X, Y, and Z happened. They went on this journey where they came to the conclusion that cash flow was the absolute lifeblood of the organization. And from that day forth, everything grew and grew and grew and grew like flowers in a meadow, flowers in a tree. So you can actually weave it in with an analogy. So when you're thinking about the story, you can use things from your own experience or things that you've observed with other people as well. So it doesn't always need to relate directly to you. And I would suggest you do it in a different space, different environment. Have a notepad and pen ready. Empty your mind. Let images, in particular, images and ideas flow through you. Write them all down. Then you can employ your analytical mind to think about that later. If you have any more questions around storytelling or you want me to clarify even further, please do reach out and let me know. Happy to elaborate in another video on this storytelling topic.